The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Thomas with the Oracle Applications Users Group. Welcome, everyone, to OEG's Collaborate 19 preview session. Today's e-learning session is titled Tracking CMLI, an approach for EBS migrations using Apex. OEG will host over 500 sessions on topics pertinent to the Oracle applications of today and tomorrow, such as this one at Collaborate on April 7th through 11th at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center in San Antonio, Texas. Before we get started, I would like to go over a couple housekeeping items. You will be on mute throughout the presentation. If you would like to ask a question, please type it into the question box in your control panel at any time. Once the presentation has concluded, I will read back the question so the presenter can respond. We're recording this session and it will be available on the OEG website later today. I would like to introduce you to your presenter, Mike Brown, Database Administrator at Blue Star. Take it away, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending. A little bit about who I am. I've been working with the database since Oracle 7 and the e-business suite going back to 10.7. Currently the chair of two SIGs, the database and the advanced architecture and high availability SIGs, and I'm the secretary for the sysadmin SIG. I am an Oracle Ace, and I was the member of the year in 2013. So I've been doing this a while, and just like everybody else that's been doing this a while, moving to 12.2 raised the issue where stuff went from being suggestions to thou shalt follow requirements. So we're going to touch on three things here. First of all, what is CEMLI? Then talk a little bit about general migrations. So Oracle uses CEMLI as an acronym for configurations, extensions, modifications, localizations, and integrations. It's really simpler to say CEMLI is all the changes you make outside of the applications themselves. So in other words, a configuration change you make by setting a profile or by changing something in license management or something isn't CEMLI. That's part of the applications. Personalizations are a gray area. They're within the applications, but they don't always work from one version to the next. So you got to pay somewhat attention to them like you do customizations. And they're potentially completely separate, like something you do in Applications Express. You may have links to them to call them so they look like they're integrated in, but the database is the only common point with something that's done in Apex. With any customizations, any CEMLI, you got to pay attention to the ongoing cost. It's always an expensive option to have a customization. So you've got to be sure it's the best way to do things. And you should be periodically evaluating any CEMLI you have to see if you can eliminate it. Eliminating might be because there now is a third-party product that will do that, so it switches from being a customization on your side to a third-party integration you're doing, but that follows rules and you can have support on it. And you've got to realize you may be doing something that breaks standard functionality. So not only is this only covered by what your internal support does, but you may be paying for support on something that Oracle's no longer going to help with because of your customization. And there's the potential that any patch from Oracle could break any CEMLI you have in that area, and you need to redo at least part of your work. With 12.2, guidelines that Oracle has had out there for decades have become carved in stone. Online patching is based around using addition-based redefinition in the database, which requires very rigid naming conventions. It requires stuff be registered with the applications that you might not have needed to worry about in prior releases. Because of that, one thing I highly recommend is, even if it's just a pass you make in your development environment, is run an empty patching cycle, right? Go through doing an FS clone if there's anything in the file system that's got to be moved over. Prepare. You don't have anything to apply, so you can immediately do a finalize and cut over. That's going to highlight if something breaks in the patch. And if you need application server-side applications, the ORDS listener that's used by Applications Express, the one of our customizations is in 12.2, the PayPal integration is not a certified integration. We use PayPal for credit card processing, so we had to write an application that sits between IBY and PayPal. All of that has to be in a separate application server. You cannot, it's not a matter of licensing. You cannot put anything in the WebLogic server that's delivered by Oracle, because in the course of patching, in the course of cloning, it does reinstall, and all that custom stuff doesn't get preserved when you do that, and can break the ability to do that. So all of that has to be in a standalone server, whether it's you own WebLogic from Oracle, whether you're using Tomcat or Glassfish. It's your problem to deal with. So, having talked about what customizations are a little bit, we're going to talk about next the flow you've got to maintain for migrations. You've got to have at least 2 instances prior to production. And except for development, they should be locked down. Developers should not have access to the file system or the database or the EBS environment with the ability to make a change in test. And as much as possible, you want to remove the ability of a human to screw up in moving from dev to test. But the fact that developers can't get in there got pointed out to me in one of the first Oracle applications implementations I was involved with. We had a developer that hard-coded a sales order number into a report. And when it moved to test, he was still going in and changing it every time before it got run. He didn't seem to grasp that that was not going to be practical in production when we were going to be putting out 1,000 of these reports a day. That no one was going to sit there and customize it again 1,000 times. But we didn't learn that till the thing had been copied into production, because the developer was beating out the testing process. But so you've got to have a development of tests in a production environment. More realistically, you probably have a patch environment. You may have more than one development environment. As a general rule, stuff should always flow through tests before it goes to production, but you may have something where test has not been refreshed recently enough, and you need to go to your production support instance, for example. So you may have code that leaves development and goes to test, or goes to production support before it goes to production, or you may have code, and I should have put a dotted arrow in for this, but you may have code that you want to go through from production support, because you originate it there because that's the only spot the data is, but you still want to test that migration even though there's no data for it to modify. You want to test that your scripts work, so you need to go from production support to test. But always make sure you're going through two instances before you make it to production. You want to control the migrations. So, the translation of that is, I don't want a chance for a person to screw up. There are tools out there that will do this. I believe you can use Ringmaster for some of this. I think the IT governance product from HP that, if you go back far enough in history, was Katana from Chainlink Technologies. You can automate this whole thing, the whole migration process, but those tools are all expensive. And a lot more has been moved back to where we can do it. We've got FND load now, where there's a bunch of stuff that we can extract from a development environment and move it forward to the next environment. You can use XDO loaders for moving the templates for BI Publisher. You can script around installing packages and other file system things. We can even, if you follow all the rules, you can build custom drivers and run your migrations all in with a patch cycle. I don't know very many companies that do that, for the simple reason that it's very complex to do, and it's generally companies want to move stuff in hot where they can move it in hot. I don't get to have outages nearly as frequently as I map code, have to move code. But so a simple thing to do is put all your migrations in the same place. I set an environment variable $migrate. Pre 12.2, it was under my custom top. Outside of 12.2, I have a UO1 app, Oracle apps migrate, so it's on the same level as my file systems. Because it's out from underneath the file systems, it's not part of the migration. And then I put each migration then goes into a single directory. The instance name it starts with, and then a tracking number. In each directory, we've got a README file with who requested it, who did the development, why, specs, what files are changed, instructions. And we try to do it with one master script then, that's a shell script that runs all the pieces, and a rollback directory that is the prior version of the code. Can't always roll back. If the change I'm making is changing data, I can't roll that back necessarily. sometimes these scripts are really complex, and it's easier to have multiple scripts, so you've got a clear decision point after each step. Do I want to move to the next step? For example, I just migrated in partitioning a custom table. Well, I did that with online redefinition stuff, but I did each step separately so I could be sure before I moved to the next step. I didn't want to try and capture a status and have my master script decide whether to exit or go on. Previously, this was completely done with outside communication. So email, a help desk system. After the code review process, the DBA would move the stuff. Once things moved to production, we froze it, and the new migrations required a new migration directory. So even if it was under the same one, we went to, like, instead of dev1234, we went to dev1234.1. But that has some issues. One, I already mentioned, rollback's not possible. The other is you get a notification that ticket 1234 needs to be migrated, and it was a month ago that it had been migrated, so you don't remember that that had moved to production previously or to test previously. Hopefully test, so it's caught there. And instead of moving migration 1234.1, you move 1234 again. So the ability to track that, make sure all this stuff is caught, keep the specifications, notify people more consistently, led us to work on an application that we wrote in Apex to track all this in more detail, including doing the migrations from one machine to the next of the actual migration directory. We still run the stuff within it manually, though. So this is the preview. So if you want to hear about the details of the actual app, you're going to have to come to the session to collaborate. So welcome to take any questions people have now, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, Mike. Currently, we don't have any questions that have come in. However, while we're giving people a couple minutes, do you mind sharing with everyone how your past experience at Collaborate has gone?
Well, I can say that going back to OAUG spring and fall conferences, San Diego 97, I think, was my first one, is actually where I really would say I learned how to be an applications DBA. You know, some stuff, but the big one was going to the SIGs, going to the sessions, meeting people in person so you actually have conversations about stuff. That's where the huge value of Collaborate is. And I'll be honest, the sessions are great. The biggest value in Collaborate to me is the networking. You can't have that 15-minute conversation in the hall can be the thing that actually pays for the entire conference and the value you get out of it. And no amount of webinars or email discussion lists or forums replaces that, because that's somebody says something that's not quite related, but it jogs something that you realize that might tie into where I'm seeing this other strange thing. And that quick discussion, it turns out that, you get a solution to a problem, or at least get directed on the right path, or where to look for something. But it's totally off track from where you would have ever come up with on your own. And then the contacts you make, people, I get emails and phone calls periodically from people I've met there with questions, and I certainly reach out to other people. The fact that you're dealing with users and consultants that are willing to share what they do, it's an immeasurable value.
Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your insight. We don't have any questions that have come in through the chat box. However, if you want to learn more about the topic that Mike just presented today, or even learning about other topics that Mike will be presenting at Collaborate, I highly encourage you to visit app.attendcollaborate.com. And once you search Mike Brown, you'll see a lovely picture of Mike Brown, and underneath it, you'll also see the 3 other sessions that he will be presenting. And you can click on those sessions and add those sessions to your agenda. One other thing is that our early bird registration is quickly approaching. So you have until February 15th to go ahead and register for the conference to take advantage of those early bird discount rates. Again, this has been a great presentation, and this is actually the last of our preview sessions this week. Thanks again, Mike, for a fabulous presentation, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, hope to see all of you there.